Good morning, everybody. I'd like to welcome everyone to the September 8th meeting of the Historic Resources Board. Would the Amy please call roll? So.
Yes. Chair Bernstein?
Here.
Vice Chair Wimmer? Here. Board Member McKinnon?
Here.
Board Member Bauer?
Here.
Board Member Chico? Thank you. Board Member Kohler? Board Member Bunnenberg?
Here.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. First on our agenda is oral communications. Members of the public may speak on any agenda item not on our agenda today. Seeing none, moving on to if there are any agenda changes, additions, or deletions.
None.
See there are none. Next, city official reports, meeting schedule, and assignments. I don't see anything on our agenda for that topic. None. Okay, that brings us to action items. I'll read the action item and then we'll start. 450 Bryant Street. Request by Lisa Hendrickson on behalf of Avenidas for architectural review of the proposed interior renovation of an existing historic building at 450 Bryant Street, the demolition of an existing 2,592 square feet addition, and replacement with a new 10,721 square foot addition, and site improvements on city-owned property in the Public Facilities Zoning District. Environmental review, an initial study mitigated negative declaration was published on July 1st, 2016 and circulated for 30 days to receive initial public comments. This item and report appeared in the August 25th, 2016 packet. The item was not heard on August 25th. Shall staff have a report for us, please?
Yes. Thank you. I was just verifying we have two speakers here today. One is an ARB member who is speaking not on behalf of the board because he's not in the majority of the board on this project. He has his separate opinion. And we have another speaker, David Hirsch, who you've heard from before. He sent an email earlier this week, and I didn't realize he had only sent it to me and not to the board. So I will pass that out. So we have today our CEQA consultant, Catherine Waugh, who will be presenting on the CEQA document, a mitigated negative declaration that is taken into consideration the historic resource evaluation on the site, among other items. So today the purpose is to hear testimony, provide input on the CEQA document, and review the plans, the sketches that the applicant has prepared to indicate several options, design approaches. This is in response to the ARB's suggestions and concerns. Then we will clarify, the applicant will clarify the design history, which started over a year ago, and the alternatives, and then we request the feedback there. We want to continue this hearing. It doesn't need to be to a date certain. We can certainly re-advertise because we need to give the applicant time to modify and submit a complete plan set with the chosen approach. So I'll just now turn it over to our CEQA consultant. The focus that the HRB should have on the CEQA document is the cultural resources. This is found on the initial study pages 22 through 25. So we have one mitigation measure, and I have the bullets up here on the screen. Also, I just wanted to briefly touch on, the organization of the plan set that you received. There weren't page numbers on there. It wasn't so clear, and my apologies for that. But it does go in order of appearance as indicated on the screen here. I'll put this back up later after Catherine's presentation. And then again, I have some renderings in my presentation we can put back up. But basically we have some changes here from 2015 to now, where the choice was to remove the garage, and that was submitted with a building at the back. That was the choice was modified after input from the HRB and ARB, and here rendering. Some of the public may not have been here for that time when there was that other choice. So, and anyways, I have some compare and contrast drawings, so we can get to that later. Let me introduce Catherine and let her proceed with her presentation.
And may I also have the names of the speakers, so when it comes time,
Yes.
I can call the speakers? Great.
I'll bring those up.
Thank you.
Let me upload Catherine's presentation. Okay. One more thing. Another item is just to note that the ARB did review this project last week, the design approaches, and provided comments. And basically, they were. We can get into that later when we talk about the approaches, which approach the three of them who are in favor of this project, supported. But I'll leave that for now.
Thank you. Welcome, Catherine.
Thank you. Good morning again. My name is Catherine Hua. I'm a senior project manager with DUDEC, and we've... Sure. Is that better? Okay. So again, Catherine Hua, senior project manager with DUDEC, and we prepared the CEQA documents for the project. So I'll do just, I won't really go into the project overview since you've already heard that both from the chair and from Amy briefly. But this slide just summarizes the key components of the project and it shows the configuration of the parcel and how that building relates to the park that's on the north end of that block. This slide goes a little bit more into detail about what the proposed configuration of the programming space would be. So the project would provide an 11,000 square foot first floor that would include the lobby, the dining room, kitchen, atrium, and some classrooms. Then on the second floor of the original building, which would be about 9,200 square feet, there would be multi-purpose rooms, meeting rooms, more classrooms, and the administrative facilities. Then the second floor in the new portion of the building that's proposed would include the fitness room, a small meeting room, and the outdoor deck. And then the existing garage on the site would be used for program space. And then there would also be some renovation to within the basement for a small auditorium. And these are just a couple of views of the existing building, including the back entrance from the parking lot, and then the shot on the right is of the garage building. So, as Amy noted, I'm, my focus in my role in the project is to help the city to comply with the California Environmental Quality Act requirements, which requires that a lead agency understand and identify the environmental effects of a project, and identify ways to mitigate, reduce, or avoid those impacts before taking action on a project. So in order to meet those goals, the basic CEQA process is to conduct any necessary technical studies. So for example, the historic resource evaluation for the property was a key technical study on which the initial study is based. We use those analyses to then prepare the initial study, which if we identify that there are no significant unavoidable or unmitigatable impacts, that a mitigated negative declaration can be prepared. And then that is provided for public review to receive any comments from the public on those findings. And then the lead agency, before acting on a project, must adopt or certify the environmental document and adopt a mitigation monitoring and reporting program before taking action on a project. So the initial study is a broad, wide-ranging document that covers all of the topics that are listed in the slide. I'm going to just go over really quickly some of the key findings that we reached in the document, and I'd be happy to answer questions on any of the details, that I don't, kind of go into. So the air quality analysis was based on the standards of the Bay Area Air Quality Management District, based on the size of the project and the nature of the construction proposed, as well as the operational characteristics of the facility. We found that the project would remain well below the Bay Area Air Quality Management District's thresholds or standards for when a project might have a significant impact. So we concluded that the air quality impacts of the project would be less than significant. With respect to biological resources, the site is already developed, and so it doesn't provide any unique habitat or wildlife movement corridors or anything along those lines. But there's always a potential for special status species, including birds, any nesting birds, or roosting bats are another special status species that could occur within the buildings. And so we identified standard mitigation measures for doing pre-construction surveys to identify any presence of those types of species. We also reviewed the tree removal and tree protection plan and identified mitigation to ensure that those impacts are mitigated. With respect to cultural resources, as with any project in California, there's always a potential to encounter archaeological resources when you start doing any earth moving. And so we've identified a standard mitigation measure that just reiterates what's required under state law, should anything like that be identified during construction. And then, as Amy noted, the historic resources component of this is the key issue under cultural resources for this project. However, based on the historic resources evaluation and the analysis of the proposed plans and their compatibility or consistency with the Secretary of the Interior standards, we found that the impacts to the historic resource would be less than significant. With respect to geology, soils, and seismicity, again, just a typical concern in California related to seismic activity, but standard compliance with the building code is adequate to ensure that those impacts are reduced to a less than significant level. In terms of greenhouse gas emissions, this is very similar to the air quality analysis. Again, the project is below the Bay Area Air Quality Management District screening size criteria to identify when a significant impact would occur. So we concluded that the project would have less than significant impacts related to greenhouse gas emissions. In terms of hazards and hazardous materials, we reviewed hazardous material databases to determine if there were any prior releases of hazardous materials in the area that could be an issue, and found none. And then we did identify a mitigation measure to require a building survey, building materials survey before demolition to ensure that any asbestos or lead-based materials would be adequately controlled during construction. During demolition, I should say. We looked at hydrology and water quality. The site, again, is already pretty much developed, and so the project would not have a substantial increase in impervious surfaces, and therefore it would not increase stormwater runoff or contribute to water quality problems. And then we looked at in terms of traffic, we looked at the trip generation patterns of the existing use of the facility and evaluated how the proposed expansion of program space might contribute to new traffic. We found that the trip rates are very low for the facility and that the project would not add substantial traffic, particularly during peak traffic periods. And so we found that all of the potential traffic impacts would be less than significant. So as I mentioned earlier, there will be a mitigation monitoring and reporting program prepared that lists out each of the mitigation measures and provides the city with specific guidance as to who's responsible for implementing those measures, how they would be implemented, the timing of that, and performance criteria so that the city can make sure that mitigation measures have been implemented correctly. As the chair mentioned, the document, the draft initial study and proposed mitigated negative declaration were circulated for public review, both locally and to the state clearinghouse between July 1st and July 30th this year. And notice of availability of that document was provided by the city's standard procedures. We received only one written comment letter during the circulation period, and that was a comment from Caltrans that simply talked about some of the contributions to, fair share contributions to traffic improvements in the area. And so that wraps up my presentation. As I said, I'd be happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Great. Thank you, Catherine. I do have one question for you to continue your comments on the environmental report. On page 38 of our packet regarding cultural resources, let me know if you have that page number. Yeah. Page 38 of the packet.
Okay.
Okay. Not the last paragraph, but the second to last paragraph. You make a comment there about the middle of the first paragraph. Talks about your comment was, this would ensure the architectural features of the existing historic building that are visible from Bryant Street are retained. That's clear. The last sentence in that paragraph, it says, the existing rear wall of the historic building would become a prominent feature of the proposed new wing. Can you expand more on that comment? I'm looking at this rendering here, page A, 4.9 renderings. Can you expand more on your comment about the existing rear, the existing building would become a dominant feature? The rendering, yeah. Since that's in the environmental report, I'd just like to have you expand on that comment that the existing rear is a dominant feature. You can borrow my picture if you can't find it right away. Okay, good. Since it's an environmental report and talks about impacts on historic structures.
So yeah, I think the intent there was to recognize that the rear wall, would still be visible. And that the addition wouldn't obscure that feature from when viewed from the parking lot.
Right. Yeah. I guess I'm asking because it says prominent feature, and if you can expand your view on that.
Yeah, and I would say that this this summary or this analysis is really based more on the historic resource evaluation that was prepared and that we peer reviewed. So we could if it makes you more comfortable to remove the word prominent, if that's that I don't think that would change the findings of the initial study or the conclusions related to the historic.
Okay. Yeah, I'm
resources.
thinking that yes in that direction, just because it's a public record. So, yeah. All right. Any other questions for Elizabeth before we move on to the applicant presentation? Okay, seeing none. If the applicant is ready, we can, Amy, is that okay? Yeah. Yeah. All right, welcome. Good to see you again.
Good morning, Board. My name is Kevin Jones with Kenneth Rodriguez and Partners. I'd like to briefly go over kind of at least the concept of the materials before you. Since we were before you last, we've also been back to the ARB and have heard a variety of different viewpoints on how to develop the site. And so what we thought would be of value would be to come back to both this board as well as the Architectural Review Board and spend a little bit of time kind of walking you through some of the history and the background that sort of brought us to date. And that's played out over about a 2-year period with different thoughts about how to approach the development here. And also taking into consideration some of the comments that we heard from the ARB. Our hope was that we'd build some basis of, I'll call it clarity, to know how to move forward with this in a fashion that we gained a sort of consensus thought about what's the best solution here. And then at the tail end of this, it also looks into something that is a little less. It was one of the things that this board asked about, was some of the detailing components, although I realize there are some bigger conceptual issues still at discussion about the shed. So I'm going to try to briefly go through this and then allow time for you to ask me questions on items that I may not have covered. And I'm kind of go a little fast here. This is the previous concept that was presented to you all last, which this is the Bryant Street view with an addition, which you see here at the back of the project. Here it is again, same concept that we brought to you last time. This is kind of our data point, and now I'll kind of go back in time and in effect. One of the things we heard from the ARB was trying to step back a part of the project and reduce the appearance of the third floor. That was kind of one of the largest concepts that came out of that discussion, and it was talked about in a variety of ways. One way was in terms of pulling this third floor inward from here. There were some discussions about the locations of trim, detailing, and molding, and all those things. Those are at the back of this. But I think the bigger part of the discussion for us today, I just want to kind of give you a little look at all the variety of things that we explored. And this is backwards order. So all of these are based on the concept that the existing dining room, one story here, which was a later addition, gets torn down. We build up 3 stories on that component. There's this atrium kind of connector element that links the shed building, the Burge Clark building, and kind of creates an internal organization that links all this together with this third level balcony area that's stepped back. Looking at that again, where you can see we keep the shed building, keep the courtyard. The courtyard was also another element that in earlier schemes we were taking out. But in light of comments that we heard from, I believe, this board, as well as a number of the Avenidas constituents, the courtyard was an important part of the project, and so we started reevaluating and looking at other options about its location. This one explores filling in the balcony area and adding floor area to it. Obviously, it's starting to do some different things with the overall building massing. The program of this is trying to maximize usable space for the Avenidas need, but still staying in a size relationship that is compatible with the existing building. This was about a year ago, where we had a much more modern design, which had mixed reviews with a variety of boards and public opinion, and that led to what the previous design that you've seen here. This one, again, exploring the idea of building up in the same area, saving part of the courtyard and the shed. And then prior to that, this has probably never seen a public view, but we explored an option that took the shed down, tried to build across the whole back of it. Again, this was in this flavor of a more modern design, but that's not really what's important about the concept here. It was more of an idea that we've done this exploration of trying to look at other ways to develop this quite extensively. Another view from that point. This one, well, it has its own merits and disadvantages. I don't feel that's important to talk about at this point. And this was our very first thing. I think many of you took part in a discussion about a year and a half ago or longer, where we were exploring the idea of building taking the shed down, building a 2-story piece here, maintaining the existing dining hall. This was a much smaller size project, and through the course of this, it basically added just 2 rooms to it in an atrium area. So programmatically, the additional space, although of merit, it really didn't serve the needs of what we project will be the needs for public space and user space here in the future by the time this gets built. But this was the point in which we were, I'll say, identified that we should explore the historic merit of the shed. And through that process, it's led us to where we are today, that it has been deemed, as a result of its relationship to Burge Clark's office and its development, I think about a year after the main building, that led us to explore these other options of maintaining it. I'm going to zoom through some of this. It's in your packet. As a result of the comments from the ARB, we looked at ways to try to step this back and alter some of the detailing elements of trim moldings, and if someone's interested in any particular one, we'll talk about that. The big concept here, though, is that the ARB, one or two of the members there raised concerns about one, I think the word he used was mimicry, but I'll say the comparative nature of having a new building that's non-historic with a sloper roof and having concerns of that approach, how it may be better suited to have a flat roof component. So there are a number of elements, sheets here that express the concept that shows a flat roof concept, and I would like to get this board's feedback on that as well. And so there are a couple of options here that does this. The other aspect that we talked about and we explored was to dial back the if you look right here, we've pulled back this element, which was 3 stories, to 2 stories in light of a comment from one of the ARB members in terms of the 3-story element on the courtyard. I think that was a great idea. One of the challenges, though, was that it starts to lose some program space, which effectively is a challenge for Avenidas, but we're listening to all the comments. And so we've explored the idea and this concept of pulling this element back, but then filling in the other courtyard, and that has, the other terrace area, sorry. And that obviously does some different things with the massing. A lot of what we've been doing with this is trying to explore these various options that we've heard from various individuals on the boards and showing you those images in hopes that we can hopefully clarify the direction that we like to proceed in from the very first renderings. But wanted to be fair and honest about saying that we've looked at all these options. So I'm going to zoom past a lot of this, and then we've done some studies in light of some of the detailing elements here, looking at the various window systems, this being a typical punch window element with aluminum frame, a sunshade element off of it, precast concrete molding as a sill element, as well as the stone veneer that we've been discussing. And looking at these detail conditions at a variety of different segments of the building, this being the ground level windows from the dining hall that look out into the parking lot, the upper story windows. There was some commentary about the size and depth, configuration of the cornices, looking at those a little differently. Looking at the composition of the eave and looking at a couple options. This one with a sort of integrated gutter and flat metal panel, which integrates with the window system, or introducing a little more decorative element here, which I particularly like because it'll give us an opportunity to conceal the gutter out of here in these elements, so those things would be concealed in the design of it. Then some further studies of these elements, and then spending some time just providing some of the background studies that we did from the courtyard with this 3-story element from the courtyard view, as well as looking at the detailing of that element in a slightly different way with railing systems and sun shading elements and cornice treatments. And then the idea of pulling that back and how that alters the weight of what happens on the courtyard face. Again, some more detailing. So with that, I'd like to really step back and try to answer any particular questions you have. But I would like to ask the board, if possible, if you could chime in on a couple of key things for us. And that's obviously this discussion of the merits of the shed, as well as the concerns or commentary about roof slopes, and of course any other thing that you feel vital for us to take away and study. Thank you.
Kevin Jones, thank you so much. I'd like to then invite the board to ask any questions of the applicant or staff, please. David Bauer.
I appreciate how much effort you put into bringing this back to both the ARB and the HRB. I'm a little confused about the set of plans we have. I'm not clear whether you have a preferred design, and I also would like to know what the ARB felt was their design. So when I look at, unfortunately, we don't have page numbers on these. This is what you presented to us, I think, last.
Yes, it is.
Right. And then you presented flat roof in smaller versions. and then pulling the roof back. I understand that, but where is it that you, as the architect, would like to see this building go?
I love that
Starting
question.
with-
I love that question. No one has asked that of us before because we've been spending so much time dealing with comments from everyone else. Our preferred design is basically the design that we presented to you previously with some modifications to the detailing components to address important commentary that I think this board and other boards had, which relate to the back part of this with some of the detailing elements revised in that. So from concept, our preference is this design. That would be the sloped roof element with a flat tile roof, not a barrel tile roof, maintaining the shed element on the building and not doing the additional step back of the third floor, but altering the detailing of some of the cornice elements, the window eave treatments, and those things. I think those were those detailed type things, I think, were very astute comments, and we'd like to integrate them in it. But from a big, large-scale massing decision and framework, that is Avenidas's as well as my own design. It's just that we've heard a very pluralistic series of comments, and we've been trying to be responsive to that enough to at least present some ideas here. I really understand and believe that this is a community project, and we've been trying to work within that framework, but it has been difficult because it's meant some of the clarity that we might normally bring to a project has been a little subservient to a lot of the feedback that we've heard.
Yeah, I appreciate how difficult it is having two boards to deal with instead of just
And
one.
you guys haven't been lining up either.
Let me switch over to Amy then. Can you talk to us about what the ARB, where the ARB is in this process, what point they're at?
Yes. So last Thursday, the ARB had a look at what you're seeing in those plans. Again, this is the plan set that's before you. Yes, am I not on? Got it. So last Thursday, the ARB reviewed the same plan set that you have with this index here. Starting with the plans that the ARB saw and the HRB saw in May and June. The design explorations that were back, a year ago, and the various versions of that, with and without the garage in the back. And then approach 1, which reduces the third floor by 2 feet and steps back at the courtyard, and approach 2, which steps back at the third floor only, and with both flat and sloped roof options. The ARB, 3 of the ARB members noted that they preferred approach number 1, again, which I'm going to show here. Approach number 1 with a lesser slope, not as steep of a pitch on the roof, and not rolled tile, but flat tile. That was kind of the consensus of the 3 to direct the applicant to move in that direction. So 3 of the members said that. One of them was conflicted, lives too close, and was not participating, and then the 5th member is here today to convey his individual viewpoint. Showing here, this was the project that the applicant proposes that you'd seen back in May. Here is the one where they reduce it on both sides here as well as here, but then fill in, I believe, this piece here, the 2 different options. And then this is approach 2, where it's pulled back right here. And I may be wrong on that. Maybe they filled in this and pulled it here. So that would be, it's shown in the roof plans here. So that's where we were last week. I think we have 3 members of the ARB that are supportive of this project with some minor modifications as presented. So we're just waiting to hear from the HRB. I should also say that Chair Bernstein spoke at the ARB meeting and brought up some new items that we hadn't heard from before. So he may want to enlighten you on his approach there.
So are these drawings you're showing up here, are they in our packet somewhere? I can see sort of versions of them, but not, I don't see these page numbers.
Right, so
It says page 10.
yeah, so pages 9 through 16, I went through and looked at my set and, counted, and this
So
is
are you talking about
the packet that you have.
That's this packet.
No, that's the staff report. This one here. I had gone through with my set and looked and counted the pages, and I came up with that
Right.
index
So
there.
that's the plan set you're
The
talking
plan
about.
set.
And there are no numbers on mine.
Right, correct. That's
Okay.
why I was, that's
So
why, and I apologize for that. I was
Okay.
trying to help organize it here in the
Okay,
chambers
fine.
for you.
Just wanted to be
Yeah.
clear about what we're supposed to be. Thank you.
Beth, I understand you had a disclosure you wanted to make? Beth, you said you wanted to disclose something?
Did you want to disclose something?
Yes, I did want to
Speak to
disclose
the
something.
microphone.
I should also disclose that I attended the ARB meeting that you referred to and spoke as an individual, and at one point had a view that was slightly different from Chair Bernstein's, but he had not had a chance to hear our views at the HRB meeting that didn't happen.
They can't hear you. You have to.
Yes, so let me describe what Beth is, and I'm sorry for not noting that Beth Bunnenberg also spoke to the ARB last week. The trouble is because we did not have a quorum 2 weeks ago, the ARB did not have the benefit of hearing from the opinion of the entire board, and so we were kind of at odds, having two members speaking individually on their opinions on these approaches. So.
Okay.
I have a-
Yes, Roger.
Could you just summarize what we're supposed to do today and what's going on? I mean, I'm looking at this drawing here, which I think we saw last time, which doesn't have a number. And I think this looks pretty good. I like the tile being all the same tile. I like the way the lines are lined up. It relates. So I vote for this. So I don't know what else we're supposed to do today or
Well,
what's
it's,
going on.
before any HRB member votes on a proposal, I would suggest that we need to listen through the public.
I'm not
Yeah.
voting, I'm just
Oh,
saying,
okay,
this
yeah.
is my opinion, and I'm really kind of at a loss as what we're supposed to do today.
Right, yeah.
I mean,
So
maybe you can clarify it
Yeah.
as being the chairman.
Yeah,
so
what
we
I
can-
suggest is that we need to continue our normal process and then answer
This
questions.
is my normal process.
Yeah,
I'm trying to
okay.
figure out I'd like to know what the goal is today, so when
Right.
I'm listening to everyone speak, I
Sure.
have an idea of where that fits into the goal.
Sure. Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
Put on the screen again what is expected of the HRB today, if you want to review that. Yeah, thank you.
Okay.
Plan, clarify.
You see that on your screen there, Roger? Yeah, okay. Okay, good. Yeah.
May I ask a question of Amy? Could
Yes.
you tell me when you numbered your pages, so we can kind of be close to the page you're talking about, what page would this be when you started numbering them? 4, maybe? 5?
So the plan set viewed by the ARB and the HRB is, ends after, says 6/16/16 ARB drawings. That's the last page of those drawings. The next page says History, Previous Design Explorations, a graphic history of previous design alternatives. That starts page 9 through 16. And then there's a filler page. Each section has a introductory page. This one says Alternative Design Explorations, and this begins pages 17 through 21 is approach 1 with 2 different types of roofs. Then page 22 through 27 shows approach 2 with the 2 different styles of roof, and then there's a filler page that says Fenestration Detail Studies, and then that's the rest of the set. Does that help?
All right. Any other questions?
I have one more.
Pat, go ahead. Yes.
I'm not sure, I didn't start numbering all the pages. So on this page, which we have talked about, page 4, I believe. And then we go back to, if we go on to this page, which is, I believe, the same, some of the same, view with this overhang roof added. Is this now deleted?
It would be page 10. I think it's your page 10.
Page 10 is not proposed at this time. It's showing what happened in 2015. The intent of this meeting was to clarify for the public and the board that a year ago we were in a different place.
Okay.
And so that's one of the multiple items that was looked at or studied over a year ago.
Thank you.
All right. Yeah, we all understand that. We don't have page numbers, so it just slows down the process for sure. Okay. I have a question. Let's see. I do not see a representative of the author of the historic resource evaluation. And
Samantha Murray is with Dudek. So if there are
Oh.
questions,
Okay.
we both read that. So.
Oh, excellent. The historic resource evaluation?
Are you speaking to the applicant's historic resource evaluation or the peer review
this is
of
by
that?
ARG, Architectural Resources.
Okay, so that's the applicant's historic resource consultant.
Okay.
That's the document that Dudek's historic expert reviewed,
Okay, yeah.
and
Okay.
that it was improved
Sure.
thereafter.
All right, then I'll address that to Catherine. Thank you. Yes. On page, our packet page 109, that's updated evaluation of the California Register of Historic Resources. And under, actually, let's go to the previous page, I'm sorry, page 108 of the packet. So this existing structure is Category 2, correct? And I'm just going to read that and then I have a question. So Category 2, a major building of regional importance. The buildings are of meritorious works of the best architects, outstanding examples of architectural style, or illustrate stylistic development of architecture in the state or region. Okay. A major building may have some exterior modifications, but the original character is retained. I have a question about the shed, and there's another statement in the resources report. It doesn't really talk about much significance of that shed structure. Would you be able to elaborate on how that shed structure is a Category 2 category?
I am not a historian, so I really don't feel comfortable elaborating on the significance, but I can certainly bring that question back to Samantha Murray at Dudek and then also to ARG, and we can provide some additional discussion of that for the city's consideration.
Okay. Yeah, I just don't see in the evaluation how strong that shed structure is regarding the Category 2. So that was my question on that.
Well, it may, if it's referring to the rear accessory building,
Yeah.
appears eligible for California Register.
Your mic is on, not off. Your mic is on now.
Okay.
Thank you.
It does appear when it talks about the rear accessory building appears eligible for the California Historic Register Criterion 1, significance at local level. So I felt that there was some justification there.
Okay. More questions for the staff or the applicant, please? Okay. Seeing none? Okay. Let me look at our normal costs. Okay, thank you. I'd like to open up now to a public comment if we're ready. If there are no more questions for staff or applicant at this point. Seeing none. Okay, first member of the public, David Hirsch. Welcome. Second.
Chairman Bernstein, committee. You have a letter from me there. Have you had a chance to distribute that? It's on, I think, in front of you there. I would like, no problem. I would like to ask you to read that letter first and not include it in my 3-minute limit of time.
I see that it is a short letter. Do some speed reading here. Thank you for bringing the letter.
Uh-huh.
Just maybe, I'm thinking, Amy, just for the applicant and the members of the audience, if I read the letter, would that, just so that...
I think that's best, yes.
Yeah, okay,
I
good.
did not get a chance to email that to the
Sure.
applicant.
Okay. Open email letter to ARB and HRB regarding the recent submission for the expansion of Avenidas 350 Bryant Street. Dear committee members, this latest submission maintains the same mistake of each previous one by adhering to the flawed historic study that requires the one-story shed to remain. By not being shown on the Bryant Street elevation, your committees can only review the rear views without simultaneously seeing the Bryant Street elevation. Certainly as important, since this is the most significantly Burge-Clark facade. If that were presented, the mass of the new construction projecting into Cogswell Park and above the existing building as seen from Bryant would inalterably mar the design intention of the original historic building. Please note that even in this latest presentation, the applicant is concerned that the program space, as shown, does not satisfy Avenida's needs. All the more reason to propose the elimination of the shed and expanding the mass of the building entirely behind the rectangular framework of the original existing two-story building. By not considering this option, you allow the tail to wag the dog. Respectfully submitted, David L. Hirsch, RA, registered architect? RA?
Yes. Yes.
From UK, I believe?
Pardon? Yeah.
AIA, and then your address.
Yeah.
And thank you for providing the letter, and that ends the letter provided by Mr. Hirsch.
Thank
Okay,
you.
now you may begin your
Okay, now my
presentation.
3 minutes can start. Just to go on with that, I provided this to Amy first part of the week. I hadn't been aware that there was an ARB meeting prior to on Tuesday. So the follow-up on that is as follows. As Amy said, the applicant shown in the PowerPoint presentation showed the past proposals and sketches that removed the accessory building. We've seen it this morning up there. They were inserted in the staff report. However, they were not all there. So my response was, can't imagine that if they really studied the option of removing the shed, they wouldn't have immediately preferred it. Amy's comment was they did really study the option and came forward with it, and it has been stated several times that they were directed to go another way over a year ago and returned with a project that retained the garage. And to that I add, I guess that's my point. That structure hardly has the provenance to support its retention when it creates so many other unacceptable results. I doubt that it would cause an historic revolution if it was removed. Common sense must trump the retention of an irrelevant and unsubstantial remnant of dubious historic quality. So that's, I guess, the significance here is that all of what you've been looking at, all of these variations, really don't solve the problem. The problem is that it's too massive, it intrudes into the historic quality of the original building, and that, I would say, is really the purview of this committee. You're here to preserve the quality of that original building and make sure that any addition to it doesn't violate that. It is possible, I believe it is possible, to build a proper building behind here, behind the original Burge-Clark building, totally behind it, that will not, in fact, obstruct the good sense of the Bryant Street elevation. As shown presently, this scheme does violate that, and I think that you should reject it and ask for a historic review of the shed, have the shed removed, and provide a proper building behind the existing Burge-Clark building. That's really basically it.
Thank you, Mr. Hirsch. Our next speaker is Peter Balte. Welcome.
Good morning. I'm Peter Balte. I've been a practicing architect in Palo Alto for going on 25 years now. I'm intimately familiar with this site. Our office is very nearby. I think this is not the best design solution for this project. I think we owe it to ourselves and to our future to consider other options. The issue to me is I'll call it the garage structure on the back. I think that does not classify as a Category 2 historic structure. It's been changed quite a bit on the inside. The windows on the exterior do not classify as historic. They're not the same as the original building. All of that said, the bigger issue is that if you accept the garage being where it is, and you accept Avenidas' needs to have a larger space, if you accept their programmatic needs, you're forced to have a 3-story building on the corner where we see it now. Putting that building on that corner causes much greater negative impact to the historical quality of the original Burge-Clark building. It's just really impossible not for the 3-story building to not be taken as overpowering, standing on top of the 2-story building when you looked at from Bryant Street or from the corner of the park. I think that's the second most important view of this structure, and it's really a shame to see that lost with all the options we've seen. It's not even an architectural issue. The architects have tried mightily hard to come up with a design that fits the programmatic requirements, which is 3 stories, next to the 2-story Burge-Clark building. I think the real answer lies in removing the shed, putting the building on the other corner. They could make it as tall as they like. They could fit the programmatic requirements. You could keep the existing 1-story dining hall, or you could put a new structure there. Either way, you would not negatively impact the existing Category 2 Burge-Clark historic resource, which really is our provenance to save that building, to save the way it looks. And I think the way we've gone about it now, we're just not going to get there with the building where it is. All of that would have an additional benefit, which is not really directly your purview, but putting the courtyard perhaps where the existing dining hall is, facing the park, facing the sunny side of the site, facing the part where pedestrians can walk into the building, would have numerous architectural site planning benefits. And again, none of that is possible by keeping that existing shed structure. The architect is forced into the designs you see now, a very narrow courtyard off an alley in the shade. It's not going to be a useful space, even if we push them to cut it down to 2 stories and do a number of architectural detailing changes. The better place for the alley, the courtyard, the entrance, perhaps a dining hall for Avenidas, the way it is now, where they look out the windows onto the park. It's beautiful. From the park, when you look at the corner of this building and see a 1-story smaller structure, which is what you see now, with the Burge-Clark building behind it, it's beautiful, it's appropriate, it fits, it works, it preserves the historical part of that project. What we're doing now will not do that. Lastly, I'd like to say that I feel terrible being here and having to bring this all up. The project has been going through over a year, almost 2 years of review now, and it's with quite a bit of thought that I've really felt that I had to speak up. I don't think it's the right solution, but it's also really unfortunate that the applicant has gone through so much effort. The staff is completely prepared and had reviewed already an environmental impact report, which would need to be changed. Nonetheless, I step back and say to you that the original building was here for 100 years. What we're doing now, what we're deciding today, will be here for another 100 years. We owe it to ourselves. We owe it to the future of our citizens, to our town, to our children, to do the best building we can. And I'm afraid I just don't think what you see today is the best building possible. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Balte. Okay. I'm going to actually keep the public hearing open just so in case there's some interaction that the board would like to have with the applicant. Okay, so summarizing, Amy, is it possible to put up back on our screen the request of what you're like for us to do today? Thanks. Here we are. Okay, so again, as Amy has mentioned, one of our goals today is to look at the alternatives that the applicant has discussed and presented, and then provide some feedback on those different design approaches. So that's, I believe that's one of the requests of the applicant to get some clarification on where the board is Is that I'm just looking to the Mr. Jones, if that's, you agree? Yeah. Yeah, great. Okay. All right. Board Member Bauer.
So, Chair Bernstein, I'd like to suggest that we break this into two parts. One, the CEQA verification, which I think from my reading is accurate, complete, and that we should move forward with immediately. And then I think the more problematic issues will be which design that's been proposed we would recommend. So if the board would be willing to do that, I think that will expedite our process.
Sure. Let's go ahead with the CEQA first. Go ahead. Okay.
And in light of that, excuse me for interrupting, I've put up on the screen the part of the report for CEQA that focuses on cultural resources to help with that effort.
You want that included in a motion, that particular page?
It can be. I think I'm just putting it as an aid to your understanding of the focus of the HRB's participation in the report. I mean, visual aesthetics is another area, but the HRB's purview in particular should be focused on the cultural resources section, I believe.
Yeah, I'm just following in the staff report. There were 3 recommendations that staff report asks for from the board. One of them is a review of the CEQA documentation. So I was just trying to get rid of that because I think that's relatively straightforward. So I would like to move that we approve this project, the California Environmental Quality Act review of this project as presented in our staff materials. There's only one mitigation measure, well, 3 mitigation measures. They all concerned the birds that live in the trees nearby the project. So.
Okay.
If I may add to that, there is also some other mitigation measures. One regarding archaeological, which I have up on the screen, CUL1. There's also something about hazardous materials that involves removal of lead, paint, and those kinds of things. So as they relate to the historic structure.
Right, but those were all considered in the report less than significant. So in a sense, that's what I'm suggesting is all of those things which are considered have no negative impact on the existing building. So we could move forward with that. So my motion would be to include this language as let me see, I need to be more specific here. So I would move that this review of the project as provided in the CEQA documents meets our requirements as delineated here on this particular page. So one mitigation measure is appropriate and that there is less than significant impact to the historic significance of the historic resource, all the buildings, including demolishing 1977 dining room, which is not considered an historic structure as far as I understand. Constructing the new 3-story building, related design elements. Well, see, the design elements I don't want to talk about here because that's part of our other discussion. So I think I'll just leave it right there. Oh, except for not demolishing any portion of the original building and no interior historic structures remain. That's a finding of the report. So that would be my motion.
We have a question before we proceed on looking for a second. Beth.
Go ahead, Beth.
I have a question.
Into the mic.
I'm not quite clear. Does your motion include retaining the garage structure
That's what I was asking.
rather than building?
Right. The motion is that the report focuses on the existing buildings, and they both are going to be retained as part of this plan. So the garage and the original police fire department building. So in that sense, yes.
Thank you for that.
I'm not making any distinction about whether it should or shouldn't be.
Well, I have I just, the last speaker, for some reason, I'm just wondering, I don't quite, I remember looking at the plans and everything, and his comments about the old garage not being totally historic, and I can kind of, I've been in that building. It's all been redone inside. The exterior has probably been reworked, and I don't even know if that's probably not the original tile. But and for some reason I must have missed out on this discussion, but if that garage was either removed or relocated, the whole three-story portion of that building could be moved over toward the alley and not have such a big wall facing the park side of the project, and it might open. And apparently there's still not enough square footage for all the needs of the building. So I'm kind of thinking, oh my gosh, is this something we haven't talked about, and why it's just or we can't remove the garage is, I guess, what I'm being told from the discussion here. Does anyone have any other thoughts about this? Because I think if the garage wasn't there, I think that whole building would probably move over. It would be lowered toward the park, and it seems to me like a pretty natural way to go. But if the garage has to stay, then I guess it has to stay. And so I'm just not clear. I don't remember discussing the garage to that kind of detail. Yeah.
Proceeding on this topic, looking on our screen where it says culture resources, and then it makes the statement, constructing a new three-story addition. I have a question for Amy when she's ready. Okay. Amy, I have a question on our screen. It talks about cultural resources, and it has the statement, constructing a three-story addition. If the board, if we get a second to that motion, and then the board approves that motion, does that mean the legal document of of this report dictates that constructing a three-story addition is approved?
What that means is that the board would find that the CEQA document is accurate and states a true statement about the project. It is a three-story building that's proposed addition. It does retain the garage. It does remove the dining room, and those are not found to be, impacts that can't be mitigated. That's the process that's CEQA. If for some reason the design changed significantly, including removing the garage, we would have to redo the CEQA document because we've already gone on record saying that we believe, even though it has not been categorized as a Category 2, the garage itself, it sits on a Category 2 site. There's a relationship with a courtyard that's been, part of the original design of the site. And there is some relationship there and significance of the garage having been there, despite the fact that there have been modifications to the building. The Secretary of Interior standards do not say you cannot modify buildings. So as you know, so I would just say weigh all of that in your discussion.
Okay, thank you for that. Beth? Go ahead, Board Member McKinnon.
Yeah, I just had one comment that kind of goes along with what Roger was saying. I think with the new building there, the contextuality and the relationship of the original garage is kind of lost. That's a fact right there. I don't think it's really relevant historically because you put massive amounts of new material between it and the original building. So I just don't see where it contributes anything of historic significance the way the design is going.
Board Member Bunberg.
I would like to speak just a little bit about retaining that garage. When you look from the parking lot and from Ramona Street, the thought of putting a perhaps three-story building in where the garage is would totally obscure the backside of the historic Birch Clark building. As a matter of fact, right now, you can go down Ramona Street almost to Lytton and see the back of the original building. You can go as far as the door to that hookah business behind Mills Florist, and from there you have a view of the Birch-Clark building. Then from Bryant Street, when you look down the alley, you get the sense of the building back there and that there is an openness behind the Birch-Clark building. So I think there are some viewpoint concerns.
So Board Member Bauer has presented a motion. We will need a second to continue with that motion. Board Member Bauer has made a motion, and we do not have a second yet. Yeah. Is there a second to Board Member Bauer's motion?
I just have a question. So if the design is still evolving, and if now we're talking about the possibility of removing the existing single-story garage in the back, and it sounds like if there's an alteration in the design, then the CEQA would have to be revisited anyway.
It's what Amy just said.
So
if this plan as proposed today changes and the architect comes back and for some reason can convince this board that tearing down the older of the two buildings there is actually reasonable, which is something I would oppose, then the CEQA process starts over. Is that right, Amy?
Yes, I would imagine that we would need to rewrite the document, recirculate the document for 30 days again, and because now if there was a proposal, I mean, we can make modifications that, as long as they don't require further analysis and mitigations, and they don't introduce an impact like removal of the garage, then we could just revise the wording in the document and it could still go forward.
But to answer Margaret's question, if the garage is going to be demolished, that's not going to fit under this CEQA evaluation.
That's correct.
Okay, so that's the...
So I think we should move our focus to the design of the building. I mean, the CEQA is secondary to what I think the issues are that we need to focus on. I mean, it's okay to say we agree with the CEQA as it is now, but if the design is going to change, the CEQA is going to change. So I think we need to tackle the design issues.
So my purpose was to deal with the CEQA issue. If we redesign it, then the CEQA issue is moot because it goes back and starts again. So add another 12 months to the process. 2 years is a long time.
I have.
So I could withdraw the motion if you want, and I just thought we could deal with that part of it because to me, it's a kind of regulatory issue. The redesign of the project, that's a much bigger question, and it seems to me that we should be separating them, but if the board thinks that we should consider all this together, I'm happy to withdraw the motion.
Okay, so go ahead. Pat, Board Member DeSico.
I think it's confusing enough, but I think our main emphasis is on page 38, where we are trying to establish whether this design and whether it is still within the Secretary's standards. As one sentence says here, although the proposed addition is taller than the existing building due to the prospective views, this additional height would not obscure the views of the original roofline, but will it be subordinate to the historic building, number one, or is it going to be looming? I don't know when the two speakers spoke, if their end goal was to make it a two-story building rather than a three-story building, but I think also we should have more information about the shed. I mean, otherwise saying, yes, it's historic, or isn't it historic, and it doesn't shed much light on it. It just says it was constructed sometime earlier, date unknown. And what was the purpose of it? Was it a garage? When they started building that building, I think they were talking about building a little jail on the site as well, for the addition of the police and the fire department. But that there's no record available as really when it was built or what was the purpose of the building. If it is significant, I think it would be good to have more information about it.
I think I read somewhere in the report it shows dates of construction and the uses. I think there is documentation in our report.
Yes, I'm going to look through the document to point you to that page. Yeah. I would also add, just to hopefully help this, we have not asked for action today, so you don't have to be obligated to, move second to approve the CEQA. I appreciate the thought there, and to help us out to know what we're going to do. But the focus today is really on the design to help the applicant move to the next phase, which is to submit a final set and come forward. Yeah. And then we would ask for a motion and a second and a vote on the CEQA document.
Sure.
Okay, so I'll withdraw the motion. I just misread that direction.
Great. Okay, thank you, Board Member Bauer. Okay, Board Member Kohler.
I guess I'd like to chime in again. Beth's comments about seeing the back of the building over the garage, I think actually is a fairly important feature. I do think I just somehow think the rear of the building would be, well, what I'm trying to say is the bulk of the building is right next to the park, and it seems to create more of a wall there in the park, where moving it over next to the alley, which would be more, industrial kind of side, and the side facing the park would be lower, which would allow the openness of the park to be extended versus a giant wall. Now, I could even see if you picked up that garage and just put it over there and move this building over, it would be more open to the park. So I'm a little hesitant about saying we should just take down the garage as I was. So.
I'd like to pick up on some of the comments Board Member McKinnon mentioned, and some other board members, and some of my own thinking also, and that is Secretary of Interior Standards, Standard 9, I believe, is about compatible and massing and scale. And then Board Member DeSico mentioned the word subordinate. When I've been looking at these plans, I guess one of the questions in my mind is for Standard 9 and then the subordination, is the proposed rear addition subordinate in terms of scale and massing to the historical structure? Another question I've asked on this project to myself probably a couple years ago when it started being circulated was from Ramona Street. How do I know there's a Category 2 Burge-Clark building there? And when I'm looking at these renderings, it seems to be a little bit obscured from the Ramona Street because there's the city-owned parking lot there. That's always been one of my constant questions here. I was also very appreciative of this whole public review process. So I attended one or two of the Architectural Review Board meetings, and one of the comments I heard from that board actually helped expand my thinking on this project. And that is to really applaud and glorify the Burge-Clark structure if the proposed new addition was a more perceived smaller scale rather than the views that we're looking at today. That would help subordinate the new addition compared to the historic structure. And if the garage shed, whatever we're going to call that structure, were removed and the perceived massing of the new addition is lower, would that help accentuate the beauty of the Burge-Clark building and give it actually more attention? And that's the direction that my thinking is going these days. Again, the public review process really helped give me that good perspective. I heard something in similar vein, some of the other board members today discuss some of that. We've heard members of the public speak about that too. So that's kind of the direction I'm feeling about this project is, can we reduce the massiveness of this so it becomes more subordinate to the Burge-Clark structure, especially viewed from the public way on Ramona Street. Okay. those are my thoughts at this point. So.
I guess one quick response is I agree with everything you said. However, the needs of the occupants would be probably compromised if you, lowered the building. And I don't know whether all the needs of the occupants could be achieved if you took off that upper floor. I don't know.
I believe there is a great genius in the architect for this project. Anyway, that's my comment as a
I was going to say,
design.
all architects are geniuses in their own right, right?
Well, actually, I believe they are. I saw a hand go up. Board Member Bunnenberg.
Let's see. I would just like to briefly review the comments, including favorable comments. First of all, I like the glass hyphen. It seems to connect to the historic building without much damage. They will have to attach it, but they're not attaching it to the roof anymore. So I thought that was an improvement. My preference for the red tile hip roof is my preference. The ARB particularly like the flat roof. So I think I could accept that. I really like the open deck as shown in drawing 6.1616 and depicted in the first two color renderings. And I really prefer keeping the one-story garage, as I've stated, because I think that it does give an open view from Ramona Street that would definitely be lost with a two-story build or three-story building where the garage is.
Okay, thank you. Board Member Bauer.
I too share a concern about the height of the building, and I think that it's a concern that we are seeing play out on a number of buildings. 429 University Avenue was once again returned, I think, to staff or to the architect to be reconsidered because its massing was too large. And I think it's 410 Lytton, another project we reviewed. It's on Lytton Avenue. That one was not approved by the ARB, as I understand. In both cases, it's a question of height, and I think this addition, while I'm comfortable with the design that was originally proposed, I don't like the flat roof design at all. I don't think it's compatible. I don't understand how a flat roof could be compatible with the original birch-like building. But this new addition here seems to me to replicate the same problems that 429 University has and the one on Lytton Avenue have, and that is that they, like all buildings in this city for some reason downtown, seem to be on steroids. I understand the first floor of this addition needs to meet the first floor of the existing building, and I guess that's, what, 16 foot on the elevation. It seems to be 16 feet floor. I don't see why we need a 10'5" ceiling height in the second floor, and the third floor, of course, is 8 feet at the perimeter, so it's not a problem. But this addition dominates the existing building, and that's not compatible in my view of the Secretary of Interior standards and all of the seminars we go to. Second, the garage building appears to be the older of the two buildings. And even though it's been remodeled, it still is in the same location. It still is in roughly the same shape. And in context, that building would have to stay, as I read the Secretary of Interior standards. I don't think that building is driving the design of the rest, except that it has to stay there. And I'm not sure that a bigger, more monstrous building that would result from removing that garage is going to be a better addition. Sure, it's more square footage, but I can't see that wouldn't even more overwhelm. It wouldn't be more overwhelming for the original building. So I think that building both should stay for context and because it's in its original location as far as we're told. And I think the other addition should come down. I have, problems with some of the other smaller details, but that's how I look at this project.
Some of Board Member Bauer's comments he just made now are consistent with what he said in our staff report on page 181 of our packet. And I actually yelled at it, and I'm glad, David, you brought these comments up again. Just quoting from that report, it says, I'll just read the sentence. The previous speaker brings up an interesting point of whether or not that shed building, whatever we're calling it, retains enough of its original character to be considered historic. And then David goes on to say, we are on packet page 181, and the top portion. And then the report continues to say from Board Member Bauer, I particularly liked the report by Dudek where they brought up again the issue on the second page of their review about whether the new addition is compatible with the existing building in terms of height. So again, that relates to that Secretary of Interior Standards 9 about is the massing of the proposed addition subordinate to the historic structure. Okay. Again, one of our goals today is provide some clarity for the design team and the applicant. Let's see how we're doing on that. Any other board members for comments? Board Member Wimmer, Vice Chair Wimmer.
I did want to comment. I think I don't think previously in any of the hearings or any of the versions of the design that we've been looking at had even considered removing the single-story accessory garage. But I think it brings up an interesting possible alternate solution that if we can balance the existing proposed design as it is, keeping the single-story garage, but if we could look at an alternate with the garage removed, and maybe in my mind, I think that if we could balance the two alternates, and if removing the garage could give greater respect to the original main structure, that's what I think our focus should be. Granted, the garage has been there, it has some history, we're questioning whether that history is really viable. So, I mean, I think it would be worthwhile seeing what we can do, how we can better respect the main building, the main Burge-Clark structure, if we can, with the removal of the shed building, and see if we can bring the height of the three-story addition down to 2 stories. I do see that this is the only proposal in our packet, this drawing, which I don't really respond to as well as...
I'm sorry, that was from 2015 that was not brought forward. That was the original drawing that was brought forward for a study session back last summer.
Right, but this is just the example that we have with the removal of this is the only example in our packet that we have that shows a solution with the removal of the shed. Is that correct?
I think there's another one as well that it's very yellow, has a lot of glass that also removes the garage. It's 2 pages. I'm sorry.
Well, there's another view of the same thing, but this is this is just showing a solution with the removal of the shed. But I believe this also shows a 3-story. I mean, if we can bring down the 3-story.
Yeah, there's another one on page A7. Sorry, that shows kind of a patio in front there.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, so if we could possibly maybe trade that in for a 2-story addition along the back, maybe we just have to balance those choices to either have, if we can remove that and get a better solution that better complements the Burge-Clark building, I think that's worth looking at.
I'm sharing Vice Chair Wimmer's comments about if there's a design proposal that sacrifices the 1-story accessory structure for the huge benefit of making the Burge-Clark building more dominant over any subordination of any new design, I'm totally agree with that approach. Board Member DeSicio or Bauer.
I don't know if this is also a possibility, but I think going toward a two-story building rather than a three-story building is very appropriate, but you'd be back to the drawing board. And what about taking the shed garage and actually not demolishing it, but moving it to, I don't know how big the parking lot is, and still using that building, but moving that one on the property? I don't have any clue as to how much open space there is. There's not enough parking. That was something that had to be addressed also, so I don't know if that's possible.
Okay, thank you.
Could be evaluated.
Yeah. Board Member Bauer.
So, with all due respect, I think we've wandered off into the weeds here. We're not tasked to redesign the project. The project that we're looking at is a result of now 2 years of negotiation and consultation with staff and clients by the architects. There's a lot of give and take. If we now suggest as a board that we're going to redesign the project by requesting or encouraging this garage to go, I think that that's not what we're tasked to do. That's not what we've been asked to do. Our role is to look at this project in terms of cities, ordinances, and the Secretary of Interior standards. I think that ship sailed. I think the garage is here to stay, and maybe the client, maybe the Avenidas agency wants to redesign this and bring it back. I just can't imagine after they've spent all this money that that's what they want to do, but that's not what we're asked to do. We're designing here, and I'm uncomfortable with that.
I think Kevin today wanted us to comment on two things: the roof, the flat roof versus the slope roof, and the garage. So I think he asked us to comment on that, if I'm not mistaken. I did. Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm not feeling where you're. He asked us to review that.
No, I'm sorry. Did I misunderstand? Were you asking us to consider the removal of the garage?
Please welcome Mr. Jones.
That's not in any of your plan proposals.
I guess simply stated, I am trying to, with the help of everyone here today, the people who have spoken, this board, the Architectural Review Board, to find a pathway that this project can happen. The motivation of this project has a lot to do with Avenidas' desire to achieve two things. One of them is to continue to support the senior population in Palo Alto. The other aspect of that is being able to do it on this site. And that has meant that we have had to look and work very hard to find ways to do that with some very physical limitations about constraint of area, a lot to do with trying to, as best as we can, honor the Burge Clark building, and it's never been our intent to damage it in any way. And so we've been very willing to listen to all the viewpoints that we've heard over the past 2 years, and that exploration, as you can see, has led us on a many different avenues. The shed, originally 2 years ago, we were dumbfounded of its importance. We were surprised at that. Our thought was that was effective to take that out. But the process today, as you see, has led us almost in a circular pathway. And what I'm asking to do today is if this board can at least give us some clarity of how, if at all possible, we can get to a finish line with this group and perhaps the ARB, that something can happen on this site. There is a point where the area gets too small, the challenge gets too great, that we lose an opportunity to continue to support senior services here in Palo Alto. And I want to be respectful of that, but I also want to honor the great work of Burge Clark and not in any way damage that. We've been trying to do a very numerous gyrations in support of that effort. So what I would like to do is that I think the reality of this is there's so much passion existing on this topic on both sides that I'm continuing to find clarity lacking about how to move forward. Avenidas has put a lot of effort forth in this approach, and And I would just like to at least have some clarity from this board if your heartfelt belief, the merit that this shed should be studied and taken out, and that's the consensus of this board, I would like to hear that and have a clarity on that particular topic. The design issues and details, that's purely subjective. We can all make that work with a viewpoint. But this one issue about the shed is a fundamental site planning orientation aspect that has big impacts on how we can move forward. So a two-story building built on portion or all of the shed and courtyard, if that is sort of the vein that the majority of this board is leaning to, I would really think that myself, as well as Avenidas and as well as the members who have spoken before, would like to hear that.
Thank you, Mr. Jones.
Thank you.
I'm not feeling that the board is attempting to redesign this project. I think the board, and I think as Vice Chair Wimmer eloquently stated, our task is to look at a proposal and how it conforms to, for example, the Secretary of Interior standards in terms of scale, massing, proportion, balance, subordination to the historical structure. So I think that's our task, and I don't feel like we are redesigning something. I think we're responding to our duties as regarding the historical qualities of this historic resource. Board Member McKinnon.
Yes, I generally support the comments made by Margaret and Martin regarding the better use of the land on the property. My personal feeling is the relevancy of the garage as associated with the primary Burge-Clark building is lost with the interjection of the massive amount of new structure. I don't think the connectivity exists any longer. And if it's not associated, if you can't tie it into the original building, it just doesn't make any sense. So I think I do favor the hip roof design rather than the flat roof also.
I agree with Board Member McKinnon's comments right now about if there's reducing the scale and mass of the proposed addition and if removing the accessory structure allows that square footage to be spread over that area. So I'm supportive of Board Member McKinnon's comment.
Should we have then a vote just in terms of whether to retain the garage or not to have the garage? So
the goal of the design team and the applicant and Mr. Jones, the architect, is they're looking for clarity on a board's position on the massing of the proposal, and if that remains proposing to remove the accessory structure. I'm assuming that would be good clarity to present to the applicant. Okay. Yeah. Okay. All right. Amy, again, we're not making motions, or just take a poll. Just to take a.
I think this qualifies as a straw poll, perhaps, on a design approach that could include removal of the accessory structure. That sounds like what's happening.
Yeah. Okay. Is the board amenable to that? Okay. Okay, so the straw poll will be you say just raising of hands, or what would be a good way to measure a straw poll? Yeah.
Why don't you just go down, each person give his opinion?
Okay.
And not necessarily a vote, but just say what each person's preference is.
Okay.
I don't think it's as simple as
okay.
Somebody on the shed and the roof. Basically want feedback on
okay.
flat versus hip.
Okay, well, I'm thinking to have a hip versus shape versus, and then having the shed removal, two separate things. Okay, why don't we start with the shed issue? Beth, regarding the possibility of considering removing the shed, and is that clear to Amy about? Okay. Is it clear to the board that we want to look at the shed issue? Is that where we're just? Okay, good. Okay, let's just go one by one. your view on allowing the shed to be removed to allow new proposal square footage to be less massive?
I believe in keeping the shed and as an historic structure, and basically that's
okay.
My feeling.
Thank you. Member Kohler.
Yeah, I'm really having a tough time with this one because when I'm looking at the photo that's on our screen now, the lower right-hand corner, you can see the garage, and beyond that, you see the Burge Clark building. And so I'm kind of saying that, is it better to see the back end of the Burge Clark building and the garage, or do you move the garage over so that you, from the park, you see the Burge Clark building and then the garage, what you be facing near the park, so when you're in the park you see more of the building.
Yeah, or if the garage disappears.
Or if the garage disappears is another solution. I have to admit, when I'm looking at this picture and I see the back end of the Burge Clark building, it's kind of neat that you see that, because the other side you can't see any of the rear end of it, and there's also the dining room there. So I'm not sure what to say. I guess I'd like to see some options. But on the other hand, there is so much work going on, and this is the one that's on that picture is the one that I said I would have liked to have seen built, because I like the way it relates to it. It maintains the view of the Burge Clark building. So I'd have to say I'm tending toward leaving the garage.
Thank you. Vice Chair Wimmer.
I think in respect to the main Burge Clark building, I'm willing to look at some alternates that remove the garage. However, I think Mr. Jones is a very talented architect, and I think that maybe, in respect to what Roger just said, because I think I also agree with some of the elements of what he said, so maybe if we could, I'm sure they'll come up with some really great alternate designs, but maybe we could flip that, and maybe the dining cafeteria area could be a single-story structure that would allow us to see and enjoy the Burge Clark building from the park perspective, and move the two-story massing to the, I think, the less desirable alley side. So I'm definitely open to looking at alternatives.
Okay, Member McKinnon.
Yes, I would favor the removal of the garage to get an improved design of the overall project.
Board Member Bauer.
As I just said, I think that the garage ought to stay. I think it would be a serious mistake to let a building that's actually older than the other building be demolished. I think that would set a precedent that we do not want to set. I also think that the next building that would come to take the place of that garage would be even more overwhelming to the original building. I see no plus here, so I want to see that garage stay.
Board Member DeSicchio.
I would favor that the garage be removed in order to accommodate a two-story building that would not, overtower the original Burge Clark structure. And as I think David mentioned, I don't know if there's a lot of unused space. I think this is page 4 that shows a stairwell. I know their need for dining rooms and classrooms. I don't know what kind of square footage that takes, but I think it is more important to not have a 3-story building in downtown and have the roof of that building tower over the Burge Clark building. So I would be more in favor of removing the shed.
As an architect, I'm not going to prescribe a 2-story or 3-story. There may be 3-story sections, there may be 2-story sections. Again, I think with the genius of Mr. Jones, I have a lot of trust in his ability to respond to the idea of the Secretary of Interior standards for whatever is proposed, that it's not dominant, and then so that it remains subordinate to the historic structure of Burge Clark's main building. So I'm in support of allowing a proposal to remove the shed structure if that accommodates the goal from the Secretary of Interior standards for rehabilitation or for new projects. All right, so let's tally up our count. Do we have, how many people are?
I don't think
4 remove, 3 keep it.
Okay, so hopefully that's providing some clarity for the applicant and the good design team that we have for this project.
I think my vote's wishy-washy.
Okay. Okay, yeah, okay.
4, 2, and 1.
Okay, additional comments before we conclude this topic. There's an opportunity in our normal process for the applicant to make a final closing comment. If you wish to address us, please. Yeah. Oh, wait.
Are we going to discuss design?
I'm sorry. Oh, yes. Thank you, Mr. Jones. Thank you for your patience on that. Board Member Wimmer suggested then we also now give feedback on the proposed designs that we do see regarding questions of sloping roofs, flat roofs.
Does our straw vote indicate then that you feel comfortable with having to redo SEQA? Isn't that?
If that's what it takes, because if that is a required process, I mean, well, we're doing our work as a Historic Resources Board on the impact that any addition has on an existing historic structure. Whatever the processes for that to develop, I mean, that's the normal process. Okay. The other feedback question we've been asked to give is on the designs presented regarding flat roofs. Yes, Board Member DeSico, your light is on.
I believe the slope roof was far better choice.
Board Member Bauer.
I'd like the slope roof. It's more compatible in my view with the original building. I don't see any way that a flat roof is a compatible form, and it doesn't seem to me to change the massing from the street, from ground level. You can't really see the roof, but from the vista across on Ramona, across the parking lot, you easily would see the tile roof. Doesn't matter what tile it is, but you'd see a tile roof. Also, I think the building could be lowered. Right now, the new building is 7 feet taller than the existing building. That's really overwhelming in terms of, in my view. So I would try to lower the second and the third floor ceiling heights. The third floor is going to be okay because it's a vaulted ceiling, but I don't see the 10-foot, 5-inch second floor helping this building conform, the new building conform to the old building. So I would try to get this building down.
Board Member McKinnon.
No flat roof. However, do not make it a teepee roof.
Board Member Vice Chair Wimmer.
Yes, I'm definitely in support of the sloped roof, and hopefully the height of the roof can be a little bit more subordinate to the original building.
Board Member Kohler.
Yeah, I think the tile roof is the preferred proposal. I'm not sure how much lower they can lower the floor levels with today's air conditioning and piping and all these various utilities that are required in the buildings, that it can come down somewhat, but I don't think it's going to, I mean, I like 9 to 10 foot ceilings, so even in houses, so I wouldn't be, anyway, some sort of middle of the road. So.
Board Member Bunneberg.
I prefer the sloped tile roof and would really encourage any effort to bring down the height of the building by lessening the height of each floor.
And I also concur for any proposal to have tiled sloping roof. Okay. Any other issues to discuss on this agenda item? Okay. All right.
Well, except that I think continuing it to a date certain to
yes.
keep the public hearing open because you
Yes.
haven't recommended denial of the project.
Okay. Does that require a motion or just a statement?
I would appreciate a motion and a second and a vote on that.
Okay. Yes.
Date uncertain, of course.
Okay. Okay. Anyone like to state that motion? Go ahead, Beth.
I move that we continue it to a date uncertain. As
David seconds.
okay, good.
Okay. All in favor of that? Aye. Opposed? That passes unanimously with all board members present voting yes. Okay. Okay. To the design team, thank you so much for your presentation today and your words to us today.
We're on to approval of minutes as the next item.
Next on our agenda is approval of minutes from July 28th. Any motion to approve, amend, or approve or amend?
I move to be approved.
Okay. All right. I'm looking at the minutes here. Is that in our packet, Amy?
That's packet page,
Maybe toward the end, maybe?
page 196 and 197 and 8.
96. Okay. Yes, okay, that's been moved and seconded. All those in favor, say by aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
I'll abstain since I
Abstain?
wasn't here.
Okay, that passes with a majority voting in favor. Thank you.
And I appreciate the minutes that give individual comments rather than the sense minutes that simply state
Yes.
the board took this action. And so the details of discussion are important.
Yes, I agree with that. That really helps the public review process and a good reminder of us, too, of what we said in previous meetings. Good.
And on that note, thank you. I didn't catch who was the seconder on that.
Board Member Bauer.
No, because he abstained.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I abstained too. I was absent.
Who's the second?
I don't think anybody did second it.
So I heard a second.
I didn't.
Okay. All right, I will be the seconder of that motion to approve these minutes. Okay.
Okay, thank you. That helps. And finally, just to follow up on those minutes, which I didn't attend that meeting, but that was the minutes of the Professorville Guidelines recommendation, and those go to the City Council on Monday, the 12th. So if anyone is going to be interested in going, that's...
So I plan to attend the this coming Monday, September 12th, Historic City Council meeting regarding the agenda of the recommendation to the Professorville Design Guidelines, and I'll be making a presentation to the council about that. So.
And the staff report for that would go out, but there's a second report going out today based on some comments that were made by one of the participants, Mr. Aiken.
Will the board members get copies of that before Monday's?
As soon as that's available, I will send it by email to the group. Yes.
Great, thank you.
Chairman McKenna,
yes.
I am not going to be able to make the city council hearing as much as I'd like to because they scheduled it on the opening night, Monday night of the NFL season. I don't know how they can do this. Donald Trump doesn't like it, neither do I.
Okay, I believe we are through our agenda. Go ahead, Roger.
One comment.
Yeah.
What was my comment? Oh, board members, if you're not going to be at a meeting, you should let staff know more than a week ahead of time, because several of us arrived here 2 weeks ago, or whenever it was, to have a meeting, and we only had 3 people. So somehow you need to, I suppose an emergency I could have, but please let people know, because it was all the staff was here and we were here, and so I know it only happens once in a while.
Is Diana no longer our contact?
Diana left the department, went to some 6 months ago, or I didn't know her practice had been to send emails to remind everybody. I mean, these are regularly occurring meetings, so they should be on your calendar, and then you should let us know if you're not going to be here, if you know in advance. We are, because of 2 weeks ago, we are going to a practice of, alerting the whole board about the meeting, in repeated emails. So.
Well, it's so chaotic, about half the time the meetings are canceled, so, we don't have a good feel if we're going to have a meeting or not. So once we hear from you. So
anytime you know you're not going to be available, please do let us know, because then we can decide which items are going to go and strategically plan, 2 months from now, this meeting, we will have that item go.
Is there a meeting for the next Thursday or the fourth Thursday?
We have no no development projects on that meeting, but we are considering bringing, because we are going on Monday to council, and council, some of that discussion is regarding the historic review process, and we've got this bulletin we've been working on to update the 2011 bulletin about the historic review process. We may want to have that meeting on the 22nd to, discuss that bulletin.
What I'm thinking, maybe it'd be just good practice for all board members that let's presume that we're going to have a meeting on the second and fourth Thursday of every month, because sometimes that can happen on a shorter notice. So I think it'd be good practice if a board member is not going to be here for a second or third Thursday morning at 8:30, maybe to let staff know. That might be a good practice, rather than relying on staff to saying if we're going to have a meeting or not, because that can come and go.
Yeah. So I keep a running total, 3 months in advance of possible projects coming forward or items we want to discuss with the board. So it'll help me to better plan, ahead if I know, hey, for sure I'm not going to have a quorum on that date.
I'm not there first week of October.
Okay.
Email directly to me would suffice, but thank you.
Yeah, I won't be at the October 13th meeting.
Yeah.
I'll be back by the 27th.
So I think
I'll email it.
Yeah, emails to Amy, I think, would be the best way to record that.
Well, who's the appropriate person to be notified? You or Martin?
Yes, because we have changing support staff. Currently Jeff Hackathorn is supporting. 2 months ago it was Alicia Spotwood. So given that, I'm in charge of the historic program, and I'm just send it to me.
Is Matt still here?
Yeah,
he's conflicted on Avenida, so he has not been coming, but he is still here. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. So I think our conclusion is, if we send an email to Amy, if you're not going to be here on the second or fourth Thursday of each month. Thank you.
Can I just say one thing? How do you guys feel about going back to having these separate? I don't like I would rather have the agenda and then the meeting minutes separate than the content of the applicants. That I know everyone said that they like this, but
it's been decided by the department management.
Okay,
the director
that's fine.
And the assistant director has gone to this for all planning meetings.
No problem.
I think we are through with our agenda. All right. We are adjourned. Thank you.